Well, okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Global Chamber. As we have members from around the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us today. So we're really excited to bring these two metros together, New York and London, as we're exploring the future of financial services. This is our, meaning Katie and myself, second annual event together. My name is Susan Asadi, and I'm the Executive Director of the New York City chapter of the Global Chamber. And I'm joined by my colleague, Katie Keith, who's going to wave at you right now, who is the Executive Director of our London chapter. So just a bit about Global Chamber. If you're not familiar, we are a growing global community of CEOs, executives, and leaders in over 500 metro regions around the world. Pretty much everywhere we have a little bit of a foot in the pond. We're focused on helping companies grow within and across metropolitan areas around the world. We're the only organization that we know of in the world with hundreds of locations that help executives grow sustainable business through warm connections and virtual services. So our objective is to make it easier for you to do business around the world and look at it as easy as doing business across the street, were it to be. So today's Thought Leadership Forum is designed to bring together subject matter experts that span the finance sector to discuss big issues and trends that expect to shape the future of finance. And it has been clear to Katie and I, since we've been speaking for the past 2 months, that in order to keep up with the consumer demand in the digital world, there is an expectation from the financial services to continue its investment into modern capabilities, such as data analytics, management tools, digital platforms, and AI. And so some of these topics are what we are going to address today. So just so you know, the audience that we target towards are C-suite and director level financial services professionals who are seeking peer support and collaboration on future trends. So without further ado, just one point, we are recording the session today. So if everyone's looking down in the participant corner, don't let that limit your awareness of how many people are going to actually see this, because the way the Global Chamber works is not necessarily in real time, as Doug Brunke founded the organization. It's in the digital world of all time. So what you're experiencing today, if you only see 23 people, think about 2,300 people that might be seeing this later. So Katie Keith, take it away. Thank you.
For that introduction, you're right. This is going out to many more people than we know right now. And I'm actually delighted to be here moderating this particular topic. I always enjoy our conversations. We are sister cities. We are the financial capitals of the world, New York and London. So it's really important that we collaborate with one another and share one of the most important commodities, information. How can we be better and do better? Having been in financial services myself for the best part of 25 years, I'm looking forward to today's discussion. And we are joined by esteemed panelists and experts within the financial services space. I'm going to introduce each of you before we kick off our panel discussion. So Clayton Dillard, who is the CEO and founder of Legion Cyberworks. It's great to have you on. With 25 years experience in technology, cybersecurity, working across fintech, healthcare, managed security services industries. I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say as cybersecurity becomes an ongoing threat to our businesses. And I love the fact that you're on a mission to help secure businesses against pervasive threats. So looking forward to hearing more from you today as we start the panel, Clayton. Next, I'd like to introduce Irina Sorota, who is the Senior Vice President, Market Executive at Bank of America in New York City. Irina, I'm really looking forward to what Bank of America is doing, what you guys are doing within your team. You're running a massive team focused on commercial solutions for your clients, and you're also on a mission to support local business by providing holistic banking solutions and empower them to be more successful. So I'm looking forward to learning a bit more about what's happening on that side of the pond. Coming over here to London and the UK, or Hull and London, we have Bob and Owen. And Owen, who is the founder at Looply, has nearly 20 years experience and expert knowledge, in particular as your CTSO role at Pentech and across the Pentech group of companies. That's a tongue twister. You are the founder and principal consultant at Looply, and you're talking about data management, cybersecurity, and looking at affordable ways for companies can manage those solutions going forward. So I'm looking forward to learning more there. Last but not least, Bob, it's great to have you on today, the founder at Get Spence and also the director of international business development at Barclays Eagle Labs. Now, Bob, you're a speaker, writer, consultant, coach, trainer, non-exec direct. You work across multiple sectors. Today, I'm looking forward to learning more from you when it comes to customer empowerment, segmentation, and competition for customers and financial services as we come out of COVID. So great panel. Looking forward to learning more. I'm now going to hand over to each of you to delve a little bit deeper into who you are, what you do, and what's your view on the future of financial services within your sector, and then we'll go into our conversation. So I'm going to stick with this side of the pod. And Bob, as you were the last to be introduced, I'd like you to go into that a bit further, if you don't mind.
Well, thanks so much for that introduction, and absolutely fantastic to be on this call, Katie. And just like you, I'm really looking forward to hearing the panelists talk about their specialisms. My background is banking. Originally with Barclays Bank in South Africa, Johannesburg, educated in the United Kingdom at the London School of Economics. And I was the business development lead for Coutts Bank the Strand in London. Business development lead for 7 years. Worked for Barclays, worked for Group Assurance Nationale in Brussels. So my background, it is financial services. I'm the international lead for the Barclays Eagle Lab in Kingston upon Hull. So for those of you that are not familiar with the UK, it's in the north of England on the right-hand side. And we have a tech incubator that links directly into Central Europe, Katie. So we've got branches in Brno in the Czech Republic, Katowice in Poland, and we're about to set up another one in Frankfurt in Germany. What I am really interested in, Katie, is the business development and the customer experience in financial services. That's really my space with the Get Spence Consulting, is to explore the opportunities of differentiation in the current climate, and it's subjects around niches. So that's boutique offers. How about that, Katie? Boutique offers. And very, very, very much interested in how the banking sector can differentiate itself from other offers. Banks are very competitive. The offers are very similar, Katie. So how do we differentiate, and how do we use data more creatively? How do we use the touch points for the customer more creatively? And what does business development look like post-coronavirus? So those are the areas I'll be talking about, Katie, if that fits with you.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how we move forward post-COVID pandemic as well, or have we decided to move forward and how that looks. And actually sticking to the banking side of things, Irina, I'd love to hear from you from the other side of the pond, very similar boat. What do you tell us a bit more about what you do at Bank of America, and what are your thoughts on future finance?
Sure, thank you. Good morning. Well, it's morning here in New York City, and good evening to my friends over the pond. Katie, thank you for the introduction. I am a market executive at Bank of America in our business banking division. I lead a team of business bankers who manage a portfolio of commercial clients. We deliver world-class solutions to lower middle market size companies. Our mission is to support local businesses by providing banking solutions with a holistic approach, with the goal to afford our clients to power the power to fuel growth in our local economy and abroad. Some of the solutions that we provide to our clients include working capital lines of credit, real estate finance, and comprehensive treasury and cash management solutions delivered via our award-winning Cash Pro online banking platform. We also offer clients our merchant servicing solutions and foreign exchange risk management solutions, just to name a few. We have a local delivery approach in the business banking segment. So my team and I are based in New York, here in Midtown Manhattan, and we serve New York City-based companies. And this is important for us because we, in addition to taking the time to study our local market ecosystem, we aim to make meaningful connections for our clients within our local market. So, for example, given that Bank of America is a traditional regulated bank, we typically don't lend or provide financing to pre-revenue startup type companies. So when our clients come to us and they're a startup, right, and they need financing, we don't just say no. We say no, but we can make an introduction to an alternative finance company that we network with who may be able to help. I've been in banking for 20 years, started back on the credit lending side, and now offer and work with clients offering more than just lending. In terms of future trends and what we're seeing here at Bank of America, data has a big part in that. So component of the services we provide involves analyzing and recommending, analyzing client data and recommending solutions to meet the specific needs of our clients. So, we go, in addition to meeting our clients in person, and learning about their business and their opportunities, we also use data to develop customized offerings that best meet our clients' needs. For example, by analyzing our clients' payment data, we and seeing if they have any cross-border payments, we can come to our client and talk to them about our foreign exchange capabilities. And so our relationship managers, our bankers are equipped with that data and insight so that they can be more advisory and value add to our clients.
Karina, that's really interesting, utilizing bringing that data through. There's like a golden thread forming here around how we are approaching, managing our customer base and engaging more effectively with clients. And I've been seeing that strengthen. And actually talking about data, I'm now going to come over to Owen to talk a little bit about Looply. And I know, Owen, you and I worked, we're working in the finance space a little bit around data management. And obviously we've got things here in the UK and EU, such as GDPR and other elements that affect cross-border collaboration when it comes to finance companies. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that and yourself?
Yes, so again, thank you for the introduction. So Owen Jones, founder of Looply. My background was very much started in IT, but with that came IT security, the emphasis on ISO 27001, and then when GDPR came out, more emphasis on governance, compliance, and control. I've worked with small companies all the way up to large companies, but when I was working with large companies, they were quite well served in that space. So the sort of mission behind Looply was looking at how do we bring down the cost of entry of effective information cybersecurity management to startups and SMEs. And that was pretty much the founding mission behind that. So looking at essentially the offering is around designing and building security into the heart of a business, how it operates, and allowing it to build and grow from a foundation of strength in a sustainable way. So that's what I'm doing with Looply. In terms of trends, the big one I see is around democratization of data. And that's going to be, there's more and more emphasis on that. So at the moment, organizations tend to have large amounts of control over customer data and what they do with that. GDPR was very much the starting point around returning power control and ownership of an individual's data to that individual. And as we're going down, there's lots of interesting ideas around how to democratize data and to empower individuals to control and manage their data. So I see very much how businesses interact and use data moving forward to significantly shift, and it being driven by the individual rather than the company and what it wants to do with the large amounts of data that it's collated.
Democratization of data. Wow. That's an interesting topic. And I feel like that's a whole nother subject as well to keep exploring. And actually, I'd love to now hear from Clayton in terms of, you know, the way we manage data is really important because it's very valuable. I know when I share my information with my financial service providers, you know, I need to have a level of trust, and there's this whole world behind that that's powering it. And I can't even imagine the debt write-off every year for financial services in terms of managing their risk. But Clayton, tell us a bit more about what you're doing and in terms of your mission.
Yeah, thank you, Katie, for the intro. And you're right. So about the importance of data. But so I guess just a little bit of background. So I've been in IT and cybersecurity since the mid 90s. So I kind of, a little bit like Owen, started out on the tech side, worked my way into a cybersecurity role at a multinational company back in early 2000s. And then I guess from there, spent about 13, 14 years at a shareholder communications company. So not directly in banking, but directly in sort of a tech, fintech type of a firm. We had a lot of interactions with banks, brokers, and other customers in the financial services industry. And obviously, data privacy and security were huge topics and issues and challenges that we were all mutually trying to address. And then in 2016, I founded Legion CyberWorks. We are a cybersecurity company. Our mission really is to help customers solve their security challenges, and we're really working towards leveraging more AI and more automation as force multipliers. I think that's one of the challenges that everybody faces. Banking institutions are really no exception to that. Is how do we get more covered in less time, less budget, and easier? How do we continuously look for weaknesses that threat actors are exploiting, and make sure that we're fixing what matters and fixing it on a recurring and continuous basis? So that's kind of where we are. I guess in terms of trend, I think that the expansion of data is certainly one of those things that's continuing to happen. There's a lot of third-party interactions and partnerships, channels and providers that are making their way into the financial services industry. A lot of and fintech is one of those huge areas of growth. So I think there's going to be some regulatory challenges. There's going to be some practical, tactical challenges on how we how do we govern and control and monitor access to that data as it's shifting between the banks themselves and third-party fintech companies. I think crypto is one of the things that is going to potentially change the way that we're kind of doing things from a transaction basis. And then I think that the trend is going to have to go toward automation. There's a lot of hours that go into work in the financial services industry, work in cyber, that we're just going to have to simply automate in order to be able to scale and keep
my phone number,
emerging threats. So, yep.
Clayton, I've just accidentally bumped us off the pins there. But I just have another question for you while I'm fixing up the screens. And if you're entering the meeting, just make sure you pop yourself on mute as we're leading through the panel discussion. Clayton, I'm going to stick with you for a minute because I'm really curious about what are because you're a security provider, right? So what are you seeing at the moment as the top cybersecurity issues facing businesses right now? Because some of the business leaders on this call might not actually have faced them yet. So it's about sort of, what's happening right now and how can we manage those? I'd like to know a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think there's a handful that are kind of top of mind, at least. So I think nation state threat actors are a huge issue. Microsoft just released a report not long ago recently where they kind of touched on how a 2021 law in China basically requires any threat researchers in China, any cybersecurity research companies in China to first disclose vulnerabilities to the Chinese government before they go and disclose those vulnerabilities to banks or to Microsoft or other technology vendors. And what that's actually doing is it's helping them stockpile what we call zero-day or exploits for zero-day vulnerabilities. I think that's a huge issue. Not sure what the solution is there. I think that there's going to have to be possibly some diplomatic and those types of solutions to happen. One of the ways that we're trying to address that type of threat is through the use of autonomous pen testing platforms that allows us to rapidly go out and pen test large networks and find the weaknesses that attackers are exploiting and help our customers prioritize those based on impact and then close those weaknesses out. And it allows us to do that on a repetitive basis. I think another big thing is something that's been around for a long time, and that's phishing and credential theft. Our red teamers go into customer environments and we pull off multi-stage attack chains, and we make our way into systems and networks. But a lot of times it's just simply a matter of obtaining some credentials and logging in. And threat actors are doing that on a pretty large scale basis. A recent survey I saw put financial services companies kind of at the top of that list. And that's no surprise. The payoff is high when attackers are targeting consumers and trying to obtain their credentials for their bank accounts. So that's a couple, I think, that we're really going to have to put some effort into, and that'll be on an ongoing basis.
Target, isn't it? Every time we find a solution, there's someone else already creating a problem
True.
in front of us. So yeah, thank you. That's really interesting, Clayton. And Owen, I'd like to now bring you into that conversation a bit further in terms of what you see emerging as our biggest threats in managing data. And you said the democratization of data. Can you go into that a bit further around what that might mean for businesses who are listening in today?
Yeah, so in terms of democratization of data, obviously the tail on this will be quite long, so it'll be a series of small changes, but ultimately the direction I see it going is that the individual will ultimately hold that data and control that data. So where you have at the moment companies with large data warehouses pooling data from various systems to then run analytics using AI, ML, etc. That will become harder, especially when you then factor in decentralized finance, where you're actually then looking at running in a decentralized fashion, where you have applications, systems, data sets distributed across the world, across thousands of employees, millions of consumers. How do you then leverage that data if you don't actually control it centrally? So there are benefits to that insofar as with data warehouses, they're quite inefficient because it's duplicating resources, because you're holding, there's an echo.
And that's
Let's
fine.
try again. So so you're holding data in various systems, but then you're also aggregating into a data warehouse, which then means you're doubling up on storage, on compute resource. So you're spending a lot of money on compute and you're duplicating resources. When you then look at the decentralized model, and decentralized finance will drive decentralized data, how do you then analyze and leverage that data? So when you've got many, many systems, things like a common data architecture is going to be fundamental. Because if you looking at, again, leveraging multiple data sets that are distributed, you need to be able to understand them and pool them together, not process them in parallel. So having a common data architecture where you can apply a common set of processing protocols and an abstraction layer You can't do that if you have multiple different data designs, data architectures across multiple systems. So I see decentralized finance driving decentralized data and it increasing the importance of having a common data architecture within your business, which also must be aligned and integrated within an enterprise architecture, design and strategy for businesses.
Oh, and Clayton, did you have any thoughts or any opinions around what that might mean for businesses on your side as well?
Well, I think that those are some really good points. I think, if the direction is going to be decentralization, I think on my side of what we do in terms of more of the tactical level of cybersecurity, I think it's going to raise some additional challenges in terms of, how do we help our customers identify weaknesses? How do we help our customers look for things like data leaks? And how do we help them manage the risks that are going to be associated with just an exponential increase in not only the locations where data is going to be being processed, stored and processed, but also the number of entities that may have ingress or egress access to that data in a large distributed type of a model. So I think it's going to take a lot of folks getting together and working on these kinds of challenges in order to make sure that we've got some solutions for that. So
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It is about collaboration, sharing information, coming together across the financial services sector, not only banking, but we've got insurance and other layers to the industry, which are all affected by the challenges we face. And it's guys like you that come together with the thought process around how to manage it. So it's really interesting points you raise. I'm sure there's going to be people listening in thinking, what haven't I looked at in my business that I need to look at tomorrow to protect my clients? And actually bringing it back now to the client at the end of this, because in every part of our business, there is a client at the end of everything that we do. And Irina, I'm going to come over to you, because thinking about data and how you're looking to leverage off that to better support your clients holistically, could you tell me a little bit about how you're collecting it and utilizing it to help clients run their business? And what's the magic thread there?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Katie. So data insight and analytics is top of mind for banks. And we have spent the last decade, if not more, collecting customer data, right? And trying to figure out how to store that immense amount of data. The future finance now evolves around how do we figure out how to use this data to be able to provide insights to our clients so that they can better manage their business. The technology to gather the data and to store the data is here today. What we're working on is figuring out a way to use the data so we can provide value-driven and advisory solutions and insights to our clients so they can better manage their business. That is what we are as a bank focused on. So, for example, API is a big opportunity. Using APIs is an example which has so much potential if used to its maximum potential to save time and money for our clients. If you think about a business paying an invoice right to their vendor, and the ability to pay it digitally, where we're a little behind the game here compared to our UK counterparts, where we see our clients still using check to make vendor payments. So the opportunity for our US clients is to transition to digital payment. And the opportunity there is not only make the payment, but also attach the invoice digitally so that the receiver of that payment knows what the payment is for. And in turn, the payer, our client, can, using APIs, can integrate the payment and the invoice in their ERP system so that it reconciles on the, both sides of the income statement on the receivables and the payables. So that's the opportunity that we have in the banking industry to be able to use that data and provide unique solutions to our clients.
You're almost becoming educators because as we evolve and we sort of, govern what's happening next within the finance sector, we almost have to re-educate our clients to come along that journey with us as things are evolving. And I get a sense, when I remember when I first started in banking 20 years ago, and I remember having to package up a pile of checks as long as my arm. And, over the years it went down like this, but it was through education and support. So the use of data and analytics to educate clients is a really good way forward. I do have one other question for you. We are in a fast moving world, having a big bank, and I know it's like steering the Titanic with change. I wonder, with the surge of fintechs that are entering the banking field, how are you continuing to differentiate yourselves as a larger company in that space? Because it's really interesting to see that balance and what you guys are planning to do.
Another great question, Katie. So yes, do we view fintechs as competitors? Yeah, but we also see an opportunity to collaborate with them and to partner with fintechs, because fintechs tend to create very customized and specialized capabilities for a niche sector, whereas traditional banks tend to be more broad in our product offerings. So big banks have realized the value in partnering with fintechs to provide a more specialized digital solutions to our clients. And the benefit to the fintechs is that they get the reach of the number of the clients that the banks have. So it's a mutually beneficial partnership that the banks see that the importance of not only competing with each other, but also collaborating. And the aim is to offer better solutions to our clients to improve, efficiency with lower cost and more transparency. So that's our view here at Bank of America about our fintech partners.
Fantastic. Collaboration is key, isn't it? It's about opening up to the possibilities as we move forward together. And actually, I'm going to come across to Bob with who's been working in that collaborative space with Barclays for a while. And Barclays, again, is a very big super organization, financial services. Bob, in terms of the work that you're doing right now, one of the things that I am noticing is how competitive it is out there. So you've got a lot of the fintechs, which, as Irina was saying, it is competition. However, we tend to want to go towards our more traditional banking, and there's a bit of a state of play here around how do we compete in this market. Can you share a bit about the work that you're doing right now to support the banks in that space?
Certainly, and I really appreciated listening to Irina there. I'm currently in two environments, Katie. One is although I'm physically in the north of England, the first is the London scene of fintech. It's what's going on in London and the banking sector. But I'm also, Katie, as you know, involved in fintech in Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia. And what's really interesting, and anyone on the call that gets the chance to go into Central Europe, you'll see a lot of innovative things that you just don't see. And it's because the banks themselves in the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Poland don't have the legacy infrastructure that we have in London. That their banking sector, it's not as mature. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. Like, I don't know who else on the call is familiar with Poland, and the Czechoslovakian, but their banks, Katie, are much more newer than ours. They came out of trade unions, they came out of credit unions, they came out of social groups. So their operating systems, Katie, are much newer. They're much more geared up for the requirements of the millennial audience, as well as older folk. So the way that they've evolved in their use of data and profiling and client engagement, it's far more cutting edge than anything I could show you in London, purely because they don't have the legacy infrastructure, the legacy behavior, the legacy thinking that London might have. Now, that's not to say, Katie, that we can drop something from the Czech Republic into Los Angeles or London or wherever, because the cultures are different. But certainly their approach to it is much more about what I call boutique banking or niche banking. Like they're coming up with ideas that don't have to be attractive to everybody, Katie. They're thinking like that. They're very much more, in general, boutique ideas for boutique problems, for a boutique audience led by a boutique banker. And that's the approach. Now, I'm sharing some of this stuff with banker colleagues in the smoke in London to say, well, you don't have to be everything to everybody. What if you wanted to be the perfect banker to someone that looks like this? What would be your toolkit? What would you need? What would you need to sound like, be like? What would engage someone in there? They don't want to see the whole show here. They just want to see what's right for me, what looks right, sounds right, feels right. So that's the one thing I've really picked out of the Central Europe, Katie, this much more niche approach, this ability. For example, I've been working with an agricultural bank in Poland, an agricultural bank, and they've got a number of fintech applications that are fit for the purpose for the agricultural sector. And one of the banks I'm working with in the UK is most likely going to literally, Katie, take it off the shelf and plug it into their agriculture offering in the UK. And it would be very difficult for that bank, Katie, to have done the same thing, because this bank came out of the needs of farmers. It didn't come out of, we're a bank, what can we offer agriculture? So the approach seems to be, Katie, much more bottom up, because they're used to working with a much smaller segment. And that segment, because of the dynamism of what's happened since communism, a much more accommodating change. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavour of what's going on there, Katie.
Yeah, Bob, that's really interesting. I love hearing what's happening in Europe, the more niche approach to banking. And I can see Irina nodding her head there, because there seems to be a sense across the world around how we need that collaboration and be able to support one another. One more question. We are going towards the end of the hour, and I want to give time for Q&A. Bob, how do people find out about these things? Other banks, other people around the globe, how do they tap into what's happening in places like Europe where they probably wouldn't have exposure?
Well, in the first instance, there's a number of organisations, including FinTech Europe, and what you will see there, I think, Katie, and what I'll happily do is at the end of this is kind of share some of the things that you might want to track. There's a lot of good stuff going on in all places. Prague, now that's not an obvious place to go. But Deutsche Bank have been sponsoring a lot of events in Prague. And if you look for something, Katie, called Emerging Europe, which is run by a guy called Andrei Vrabel, there's a lot of niche events. You'll see stuff, Irina, that you're thinking, okay, that's really cool, but we couldn't put that in. But it could spark off, hang on a minute, we could do something like that with what we have. So there is an ecosystem, Katie, but you kind of have to search for it. And I'm quite happy to share the places I go shopping for ideas, if that helps anybody.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And actually, these forums alone they spark ideas, they create conversations, and they get us thinking about what we need to look for in our businesses. I'm sure there is a lot of people that will be listening in that are somehow involved in decision making within the financial services sectors. So these ideas, I hope, have brought some light to how we can work together, what's out there. I just want to say thanks for all of your insights today. I was able to get the questions that I wanted to get out to you, which was fantastic. I'm going to open it up to the audience now. I haven't had a chance to read the chat, Susan, but have you seen any big questions coming up?
Yes, I have. Like, mute, unmute. Charles Bernard had a question. Charles, do you want to ask your question and just introduce yourself briefly before you ask your question?
I'm not sure I was asking a question, although I'll try to think of one.
Okay.
But,
all right. There is somebody, CB, Chris Bennett. Is it you, Chris Bennett?
Chris.
Is it Chris Brett? Yeah, it must be Chris.
I'm happy to do part two.
All right. Okay.
Which is,
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm in New York. I'm a charter member with Susan. Very happy to be here. Very happy to hear some of my London colleagues. That's where I grew up, although I've been here 30 years now. So some of that mid-Atlantic accent is creeping in. But I run a sales, training, and management consulting firm here. And a lot of what you're saying impacts my clients. And so I'm very happy to get your philosophies and your wisdom. So thank you for sharing. And thank you again, Susan, for inviting me here.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're here. Chris Bennett, were you the CB who had the first question?
You have audio?
I can hear you. Did you have a question?
Sure, I have two. The first relates to cybersecurity. So we're launching a pilot project for a decentralized autonomous organization based on blockchain, and interested in the speaker's perspective on what we might do to make that more compatible with the traditional fiat currency banking infrastructure. And the second is just interested in general reaction to how the legacy banking infrastructure will work with the blockchain and distributed financial information emerging market. I'll go back on mute to take the response.
Chris, so I think the first question, Owen and Clayton, did you get that? Would one of you like to come in and talk about that decentralized?
So I thought the question was more about how it would integrate and into the traditional fiat model. So I was thinking it would be more...
second part.
Okay.
Second part. Yeah. Did you hear the first part? I found it hard to hear you, Chris, on your first part. Maybe could you ask that first part of your question again?
Thank you, Katie. Sure. The first part relates to a pilot project that we have on decentralized finance. And we want to interface with the existing legacy financial infrastructure like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, et cetera. So we're looking for cybersecurity guidance on what we can do to make sure we stay secure. And then the second part is on just feedback and observation.
Got that further. So it's about the cybersecurity. Clayton, did you want to answer?
Yeah, I think I could add a little bit there. So our philosophy is that offense informs the defense. So I think for any organization, especially considering what I think you're talking about, continuously looking for weaknesses and prioritizing those based on impact and resolving those is going to be absolutely essential. I think understanding what the biggest risks are for your organization and for the if you want to call them like the legacy bank organizations that you're going to be connecting to, and making sure that the architecture is designed with data privacy and data security from the ground up. I mean, there's a lot of tactical things that can go into that. It's a huge conversation, I think. But I mean, I guess those are a couple of kind of off the cuff thoughts on that.
Yes, and I'd also focus on non-technical security control. So not just looking at the application, the technology, and the testing of the infrastructure, but also take a more holistic view. And with particular emphasis, I would say, on third-party risk management, because that's growing as a risk factor. So what's happening, especially if you're looking at working with larger organizations, is malicious actors are targeting smaller suppliers or partners of larger organizations as a way of compromising the larger organizations. So if you are interfacing with companies such as Wells Fargo, you may be seen as an easy way in to compromise that larger organization.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I'd like to... Oh, go ahead, Clayton.
No, I wanted to kind of double down on what Owen was saying. I mean, I think as we get to more, of a decentralized environment, Arena, you were talking about, kind of the drive towards opening up APIs so that you can interface with other companies and exchange data and provide new and innovative services. That vendor risk and supply chain risk management, has got to be one of the, foremost priorities as we go forward. So.
Yeah, spot on. I also wanted to say, to address how do we stay secure, right? And it starts with education. And at Bank of America, we're in front of our clients with various information, webinars around cybersecurity. What kind of fraud attempts are we seeing by fraudsters, and what our clients should be doing by making sure their system and processes are secure. So education, I would say, is the number one defense here. For example, one of the things that we always tell our clients is, make sure that you know who the sender is. Just by looking at an email address, right, of someone who's telling you their payment information has changed. Take a closer look, or the urgent wire request. It's the simple things that can go a long way, but it goes back to education, making sure that everyone's educated and what to look out for.
One more thing on that, if I could just hop in real quick, just kind of dovetail into that, Arena, and that is, banks are really good about this, and there's a few other industry verticals that are also really good about it, but it is inter-community sharing of security trends, emerging threats. That kind of collaboration, I think, is fantastic, and I think it's one of the things that makes the banking and finance industry so strong. Is there's a lot of cross-bank collaboration in terms of cyber threats, in terms of risks, in terms of what the banks are seeing on the ground level, and through that kind of collaboration, it makes it easier for banks to sort of help each other harden. It also helps banks get out in front of some of these emerging threats and communicate to the consumers, whether they're private consumers or business consumers, and make sure that they are aware of emerging threats as well. So I think that's a thing that we need to continue doing.
Katie, I think we have another question here from Matthew Sawyer. He's a recent member of our New York City chapter, and he has a question for the panelists. Matthew, want to vocalize your question, say one thing about yourself, and then launch into your question, please?
Yeah, thank you. I was curious about what regulations you see coming up, particularly around money laundering and data security with the U.S. within the U.S. government.
Susan, I think you're on mute. You're saying something, but this is, even though banks might be impacted by regulations, not my expertise as a banker. So I'll pass on this one.
Bob, I saw you shaking your head. Do you have a comment? Katie, I'm going to let you. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah, I got your message, Bob. No worries. We'll be off well before the hour. And great question there. We did have another one here, actually. So Chris had another question.
I don't think anyone answered the question, Katie. Does anyone have an answer
Arena.
to Matthew's question? Arena didn't answer it. Does Clay or Owen, do you want to address the question Matthew asked?
Very US centric in terms of any changes. So in terms of this side, it'll be very difficult for us to know if there's any changes coming with AML, KYC. But Arena, do you see any changes on the horizon in terms of what we're doing today for that? I think you might have answered that while I was reading a message.
Yeah, as a banker, KYC is of utmost importance, right, for us to know who we're dealing with. But in terms of any new regulatory oversight that will be imposed, I don't have insight into that.
In terms of this side, I actually still work in finance. It's still very much drilling in and checking each, like from a transactional perspective, really understanding where things are going and where they're coming from, and documentation is key, and just really those layers of checking and haven't changed. But I think, Owen, I don't know what you're seeing in terms of, is anything coming through from a technology perspective that are helping organisations to define that further?
I say not particularly. I say the UK government at the moment are talking about rolling back elements of GDPR, which is odd given the fact that the UK was the champion within the EU that drove GDPR in the first place. In terms of things that I know are coming, I guess you've got the UK version of Sarbanes-Oxley, but that's not really specifically to do with data security. I know what I'd like to see, and it goes back to the collaboration point that many people on the panel have raised, is some, at the very least in the US, but probably more globally, is collaboration between nation states to look at harmonizing data privacy, data security. So rather than having so many 100+ territories with 100+ different regulations, it would significantly simplify and aid businesses and facilitate efficiency and effectiveness, is if there could be some form of globalized standard, even if it starts with some of the larger economies such as the US, the EU. I can't see China going down that road, but you look at maybe Canada, the United States, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, sort of getting together and trying to come up with a standardized base. So I know it doesn't really answer the question, but that's definitely what I'd like to see. Whether it'll happen or not, who knows?
Big idea and an extra big question for another day. And I think we do have a couple more questions that have come up in the panel chat, but it's very important that we keep on time today. So Emmy had a question, Adesela had a question, and Chris might have had another question just down there. We will get the panelists just to have a look at that chat bar and answer those questions for you in the chat while Susan and I wrap up the call today. If you do have really important questions, or you would like to connect with each other to learn a little bit more about how we can collaborate further, that's what this is all about. It's about making those connections. So reach out to Susan and I. You'll have our contact details. We've also got our CEO and founder who's on the call, Doug, and our VP of Business Services, Cesar, who can help you to connect with anyone, anywhere around the world to help you with your business growth needs. So on that note, Susan, I'll hand over to you to close the call.
Okay, we still have, Katie, 8 more minutes. So I want to allow one more question to come out. So let's have
I'm looking at the wrong time again.
That's okay. That's okay. Let's have the direct question to Bank of America. Somebody had a question for Bank of America directly.
And that was Adesola, Debbie.
All right, pick another question, Katie. Another one. Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it. Ask your question. Say something about yourself quickly and ask your question.
So my name is Adesola Debbie. I'm the Executive Director for Global Chamber back in Nigeria, and we've held some webinars. So the question is, I'm just wondering, Bank of America, are you open to investment in Nigeria? Because there's a whole lot you could actually partner with, get investors to come in, in the areas of technology, in the area of entertainment, mineral resources. There's a whole lot actually, and so it's something I've been thinking about and trying to get some answers to, really. So how do you go about that?
Thank you for your question, Debbie. I will connect with you offline and let you know all the things we're doing in Nigeria. I don't have it handy at this moment, but the list is lengthy. So let's connect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to allow Doug, if he wants to ask a quick question. Doug always has a question if he's live. Doug Brunke, do you have a question for our panelists?
More just a comment. I just really love the fact that you've all shared today some really great information. Love the synergy and the different angles that you're taking it from. We love working in particular with Bank of America, one of our initial members in the Phoenix chapter, and Karen Beddish and Vince Thielander. I don't know, Irina, if you know them, but they've been, and several other folks, including Benicio, have been just so supportive of Global Chamber. So thank you for giving us a glimpse into the future. We all need to be aware and cognizant that financial services are changing. And Irina, something you said that was really hit me home was we still write checks. And I went into the bank the last couple of weeks, and I recognized not just how slow it is, but the fraud potential involved with that and all the different systems that are available to be able to protect on the fraud side. So thank you for pointing that out. And if anybody is still writing checks, don't be like us. Listen to Irina. Thank you for sharing that today.
Okay, excellent, Doug. All right, well, now I will take your lead, Katie, to close the meeting. I want to thank you all for taking the time to spend this hour with us. Just so you know, on a regular basis, anyone who's not a member, you can attend meetings similar to this one with peers from around the world to address issues such as the one we addressed today. We have regular meetings both in London and in New York City, hosted by the respective chapter, and then headquarters led by Doug Brunke and Cesar. Sponsors numerous meetings a day to support the growing membership, including the Nigeria chapter. I mean, we're all over the world. And if you become a member, say in London and or New York, you can attend all these meetings. So if you're not a member, you should consider it. Our chapter in New York will have its next membership only meeting on Thursday, December 15th. It will be a holiday cocktail hour at 4:30 in the afternoon. It will be in the area of Grand Central. I have not picked the location. I will get that information out soon. It is open to members in New York. However, if you're a member from Nigeria, London, Dubai, wherever you're from, and you happen to be in New York that day, let us know, and you're certainly welcome to attend. So the most important thing for people in the New York chapter to know is, because of the unfortunate circumstance of the change of my family partner, my husband, I will be moving back to New York at the end of December. So actually, Bob, I'll be actually chin-chinning you the next time we meet. Maybe not for the December meeting, but certainly for the January meeting. So cheers to that. And Katie, it was great to do this. And just so all of you know, this is our annual event. We will be doing one next year. I don't know what month, what time, but Katie and I will be in touch. Katie does the best run sheet I've ever seen. So I'm sure you'll get every single detail long before. And look forward to seeing you guys soon. And check out the event calendar. I'm sure Doug has about 10 meetings coming up on the calendar. Ciao.
Thank you to our panelists and our
Bye.
attendees. Good night. Good morning.